Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zaz Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mock Ritual! Hello, and welcome to our ritual in the ritual chamber. The walls are red, and there's an eerie painting behind us.
Oh. A hat filled with flowers on a peaceful day.
What could that symbolize in this ritual, Linda?
I don't know.
It symbolizes the cost of innocence. As the innocence of that cheerful day is fed to the occult power of the ritual.
Alright, but I think what you're gonna get there is that when you see rituals in games, rituals are distinct from, like, the kinds of spellcasting where it's just like, I chant a few magic words, wave my fingers for a second, and then suddenly, boom, spell. Rituals are, you know...
They're the unknown.
Yes, they are. They're magic, but they're magic that requires a lot of time or steps or resources. Magic that can generally push the boundaries of the possible. Magic that can be innovative. Magic that might be ancient and lost and being rediscovered. They're the frontier for magic that is, or flexible in some way. So, you know, in Pathfinder Second Edition, they have their specific role that's that. But you also see them in other games, too. Like, you know, World of Darkness games when you have, like, these long rituals. And it's like, I'm going to get this big setup and I'm going to be able to do a lot of ingredients. And this is going to be something that is going to have a higher power ceiling, perhaps.
And D&D sometimes has rituals, too.
Yeah, than what you can have in from just, like, a basic spell. Because they have... Maybe you have to go hunt down the specific ingredients, or maybe you have to stand in this specific place chanting, or maybe you need to perform it at a specific time, or things need to align correctly to make it happen. And like you were saying too with the occult, the idea of something being mysterious, something being unknown, something needing to be rediscovered, something not being fully understood.
Rituals are not the banal kind of, like, sort of, like, snooze-festly predictable magic where you can say, oh, cheerio, everyone. I'm going to cast a fireball. I'll be standing 20 feet and 1 millimeter away from it and will not take any burns from it. There's obviously a safe place to be when I'm casting the fireball because it scientifically cannot go past exactly these 20 feet.
And rituals generally in games have some way that they can go horribly wrong. You know, maybe this would be because, you know, in fiction, like, you had the wrong ingredient or you got distracted or something, and then they can backlash or backfire or cause some kind of other major dramatic issue.
Yes. So, it goes then... Perhaps without saying, especially since we do this a lot in any sort of topic, that when we're going to be talking about designing a ritual to meet your game's need, we have to start with the story, the concept. What is the goal behind this ritual? Like, when you're making a new ritual for your game, you don't just make the ritual just, like, arbitrarily and be like, yeah, it's about sharks. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe, but only if you know that you need a ritual about sharks. You don't just make one because, like, sharks are cool, therefore shark ritual.
Yeah, a lot of times a ritual is going to fill the need of, for the sake of what the players want to do or what is necessary for the story to move forward, there's something that needs to be achieved that can't be achieved by normal means, or something that you don't want to be widely prevalent as something that people can generally do in the setting. So you want it to be a challenge to be able to achieve that thing. Like, you know, a setting might handle teleportation in that way, for example. They don't want people teleporting all over the place. They don't want, you know, or the PCs want to do something that's more or better or more long-lasting, that gets around the kinds of things that their opponents want to do. They want to create, like, a ritual ward around a space that's not going to be as easily punched through. Maybe the PCs are dealing with something that's more powerful or higher level than they are. Or maybe they are... trying to delve into things that were lost and otherwise unavailable.
So when you're determining that a ritual is something that you're going to design, it could have started from a lot of different ways. Maybe it was just like, well, for this storyline, I kind of like the idea that, like, this lich is doing a ritual that will allow them to, like, see through the eyes of every undead they made. And you might have it for story purposes that you want the villain to be able to do something weird.
Mm-hmm.
You might also have one that's like, I want this to be like the ticking time bomb threat of this ritual might happen, but maybe the PCs can interrupt it. You might also have a ritual that you want the PCs to perform in a similar notion where it's like, well, you know, you use this ritual to do a MacGuffin-y thing for the campaign. And another one that's a little different from all three of those is the PCs want to do something that's not really covered within the rules of Magic and ask if they can use downtime to invent some kind of a ritual for it. And you're like, well, yeah, theoretically, yes. I want you to roll some checks. We'll figure out what it does. Because it seems like something that could be fair to do, to give as a long-lasting effect. It doesn't seem like it would, like, break the game or make things unfun. But it just doesn't happen to be covered by any spells or rituals that currently exist.
Yeah. And when it comes to improv too, allowing something as a ritual is a lot less likely to potentially go out of hand than creating something as a new spell that you can just constantly cast, because maybe the ritual had rare ingredients that they won't always have access to, and there's a story reason why, like, you could, you know, the way will open but once, you know, you keep coming back to this well a lot of times.
Exactly.
Okay, so I often see them being used as that sort of thing of, you know, we can do this only now, we can do this only once or only twice or something like that, so that you don't have the, you know, if you don't want the PCs to be like, yes, well, we're going to go into this dimension, and then we're going to head back home, and then we're going to have a nice rest, and we're going to get all our resources back, and then we're going to go back into this dimension.
Mm-hmm. So let's go through those possibilities one at a time. If you have a villain who's already performed a ritual as part of the story, you might not actually have to design all of the ritual. If they performed it and critically failed, and the story is how they critically failed, that was their origin of being a villain, then you may only need to know vaguely what they were trying to do and what the critical failure effect was. If they performed it and succeeded, maybe you just need to know what special benefit they get. This lich can see through the eyes of undead because of a ritual.
Yeah.
That could be enough.
But if it's a ritual that you then expect the PCs might be interested in getting their hands on themselves, you might want to think a little more detail about it. You know, do you want the effect that the enemy had to be like, oh, we're going to give them a critical success on this ritual, which is pretty hard to attain, because that's what we need for the story's sake. But, you know, the PCs probably won't get that effect when they do it.
So when you're looking at things that PCs might use, there's the one that you want them to use, and there's the idea that they just kind of came up with, and you're trying to make it into a ritual. So if there's a ritual that you want them to use for the plot, then in that case, you're going to want to pay close attention to the way that rituals are designed in the system that you are playing. And in this case, I will use Pathfinder 2 as a good example for this. In Pathfinder 2, rituals are designed to be this uncertain unknown, that even if you're actually, like, quite good at the skill for the ritual, that there's still some uncertainty levels. At a higher level, the uncertainty goes down, and it starts getting more and more likely that you'll succeed if you bring exactly the right crew to complete the ritual. But it's still, especially when you're starting off, it's pretty dicey, and you have a pretty decent chance to fail, even though maybe an expert ritualist isn't going to critically fail except on a 1, or if one of their secondary casters botches it for
So,
them.
like, if your ritual requires performance, but, like, no one in your party has performance, that could be difficult. Like, if you
That's
had
a huge problem.
Like, if you had a ritual in Mage, for example, and it's like, well, nobody has the correct spheres of magic. Nobody has entropy, but this requires entropy, so, like, now what? Then you need to make sure that it's something that fits with the PC's abilities, or that they have access to, like, an NPC who could fill in that last gap. But you probably don't want the NPC to be, like, the main person doing it a lot of the time.
So, generally, if you need the PCs to do it, and you want them to do the ritual as part of the game, then, yeah, you shouldn't pick a ritual that you know they can't do. That's just... You're setting yourself up for failure there.
Yeah.
Similarly, you might consider making it so that the ritual that you need them to do is not, like, the highest rank ritual that any character of their level could possibly do, because those are the ones that are hard. Lower rank rituals are generally actually pretty easy to achieve. And so if you just need it to be accomplished, and it's not something that feels like it has to be the highest rank of ritual they can do, make it a lower rank ritual, and then it can be more reliable. But if you want it to be pretty dicey, and you have a very interesting thing that will happen in the campaign for all 4 of the possible success results, then maybe make it the highest rank ritual.
That's a very important thing too, because of the uncertainty of ritual success, you're not going to want it to use a ritual as a gate if you want to be like, the story will fall apart if the PCs don't enter this thing.
Like, for instance, if you have a ritual that is like, get to the Lich's stronghold. Critical success. You get to the Lich's stronghold, the Lich is shocked. You got to the stronghold so efficiently and now is off guard.
Mm-hmm.
Success. You get to the Lich's stronghold. Failure. You didn't get to the Lich's stronghold. Try again. Critical failure. You can never get to the Lich's stronghold. Like, that is not good.
Mm-hmm.
This is very bad. A ritual, because first of all, the failure just means that you just have to keep doing it over and over again. And second of all, you weren't ready for the critical failure, or maybe you were, and you're just like, you guys lose. You can never get to the Lich's stronghold. The Lich destroys you from the stronghold. That's also where the Lich's soul cage is. Ha ha ha. A better result might be that critical success, you get to the Lich's stronghold with an advantage and they're off guard or whatever. Success is you get to the Lich's stronghold. Failure is that you're trapped in limbo in a maze of otherworldly passages that might eventually lead to the Lich's stronghold. And critical failure is that you're trapped in the Lich's, like, prison dimension with their strongest, like, minion who's there to destroy you.
But if you can fight your way out of that,
you can fight your way out, maybe you'll be able to get into that labyrinth that the regular failure was in.
Or at the very least, you'll be able to make it back to regular reality, having gained some information and come up with another plan of attack based on what you gained. Yeah.
So when it's going to be gating everything, you want to have something interesting that will happen at every result of the ritual. This is very particularly for a ritual you're designing that is a plot gate MacGuffin ritual. Now, when the PCs are creating the ritual, then the rank of what the ritual is does not need to be based on any of that. It can be based on what you think the rank of the effect is. And it might be, not only might it be the highest rank they can
do. It might
be beyond what they can currently do. It'd be like, yeah, sorry, I've compared this to other rituals and spells, and this feels like it's beyond you right now. But that's okay, because it's going to take a while to research it anyway. So by the time you're done, maybe you'll be higher up and be able to cast it. But I will tell you right now what the skills are going to be when you start the research. That way you and your party can consider using your level up skill increases to get better at the skills that you need for the ritual. So it can be aspirational like that. Or it might be that by the time they come up with it, it's actually not that high rank of a ritual compared to the characters. It's just something they wanted to do, and you're like, yeah, you guys are like level 14. You could obviously do a ritual that does that. It's not even the top one for you.
Yeah, and another thing to consider with rituals is when you're presenting them is that rituals do take time and effort to perform. So if you want rituals to be more part of your campaign, you're going to want to have more downtime in your campaign to allow them to be performed.
If you never give enough downtime to cast the ritual, except for that one time when you let people cast the ritual,
then they might need to do other things that time, because they're like, wait, this is the only time I get to do other things. So rituals tend to work best in games where the PCs have decent chunks of time to prep and strategize, and some of them might decide, hey, I'm going to do a ritual to assist us in this next section. Like in the Hell's Rebels game that we're playing. We might have someone's casting a couple people are doing ritual, and then like some other people are like going and helping with gathering information, and some other people are like finding items or doing other stuff.
One more thing that is not in any of the rituals that are in the book, more or less, because those are like kind of standardized, but for your campaign, if it's like a MacGuffin ritual, or even if it's a ritual the PCs kind of want to do that seems like a one-off, is that you might consider having secondary checks or some other element of the ritual that can be bypassed by doing some kind of quest. Where it's like, yeah, so Linda said it might not be great if nobody in your party can do performance and there's a very difficult performance part of the ritual, but maybe it just makes sense that there would be, but it's like you could do that, or you could get the magic harp from the evil cloud giant in the up the beanstalk, and if you get that, then you don't need to do the performance secondary.
You could get the animated violin to play its song or what have you. Exactly.
Linda, violins is never the answer.
Good one.
So the point is that you have a lot of ability to adjust the special rituals that you make for your game. when it comes to the time and cost of rituals, think about how permanent they are, how often they would want to be used, and just in general, the cadence of them.
Yeah, so like when you say the time and cost, it's all not only the casting time but also the duration they last for. You know, you can think of a lot of rituals that are last for like a year and a day. It's a very classic amount of time for something that has an effect like, you know, bolster the harvest or, you know, change the weather or things like that.
Ones that last for a year and a day or forever or something like that, they might take like a week or more to cast. Whereas ones that are like, yeah, you know what, this only works for like a day or two, those might be ones that only take the minimum of 1 day to cast the ritual.
Yeah, and you're going to see, you know, a lot of those long ones, it's going to be either like a, you know, a smaller, slower growing consistent effect, or like an effect that's just like very simple to describe, like, you know, this is an imprisoning ritual that imprisons this creature inside of this prison, and like it doesn't do anything complicated, or like this is a ritual that slightly boosts the growth of the plants in this area for like a while.
Anytime you add a secondary skill check to one of these rituals, you should be considering what the story of the ritual is, what the image in your head is, what that person is doing. So if you're like, yeah, this ritual of freedom to release someone who's in prison should have survival. It's like, okay, that's a little weird, but why? Well, because they're like looking through maps and like finding the spatial location of the magical prison or something. They're like, oh, okay, I guess I could see that in this particular version of the ritual. Make sure there's a justification, there's something they're doing in the narrative that also could allow for you to come up with a bypass idea of like, oh, well, if we get this magical minor artifact compass that can automatically locate prisons, then we could skip out on doing this particular check or something like that.
So I was seeing some comments from Rohit about some of the challenges of using rituals.
So they definitely can be tricky, especially if you are in a published adventure that just throws the PCs at like a high rank, maximum rank ritual with no like recourse for what the 4 degrees of success are going to do and no additional assistance. And it's like, well, did they have the right skills? The published adventure didn't check when it created the ritual. That can make it pretty rough. So going for lower rank rituals or ones that you know that the PCs have the skills or allies who have the skills to assist with is going to definitely be a little bit better for them. Plus, if there are enough secondary casters, there's a decent chance that one of those secondary casters rolls a natural 1. And so that could be a serious problem. Now, normally, you are not allowed to use bonuses or fortune effects that would on rituals unless it was something that could apply to the entirety of the casting of the ritual in Pathfinder 2, which is basically almost nothing.
Yeah.
However, there is one way that you could try to avoid critically failing the ritual with your secondary casters if you really want to, which is if secondary casters have assurance that might be high enough to fail but not critically fail. And if you were in a one with a ton of secondary casters,
can you quickly go over what are the mechanics behind secondary casters?
So secondary casters in rituals are rolling an easier check than the primary caster, but it's still not that easy. If they make it, great, the ritual proceeds at pace. If they critically succeed, it even gives a bonus to the ritual's primary caster. If they fail, there's a small penalty of -4, which is pretty substantial.
That's not small.
Oh, no.
That's the largest possible penalty in Pathfinder.
It is.
Yes.
It's pretty substantial. But if you have, I'm saying only do the thing where you have everyone fail but not critically fail if you have like 6 or 7 secondary casters, because at the point where you have that many, first of all, almost no rituals do this, but at that point, somebody's going to fail. Just somebody is. And so but it's circumstance penalty. So once one person has failed, then it doesn't matter if everybody fails.
Yeah,
but if you critically fail, it lowers the entire degree of success by 1.
Yes.
And at that point, you're done.
So I wanted to check in because there was a question in chat about someone thinking about homebrewing the effects of secondary checks to be less harsh and asking if that's a good idea.
So, I mean,
it kind of depends upon what you want the feel of the ritual to be, too. Like, does this ritual feel like something that is difficult and dangerous to pull off? Or does this ritual feel like something that is, like, is this a ritual to summon, like, an outer god or, like, do some other really dangerous thing? Then, like, probably making it easier might be disruptive, but if it wasn't, I feel like it just depends upon your game and what you want the chances of failure to be.
Yeah, do you want the rituals to be, like, these kind of tense situations, or do you want them to be a little bit easier to get through? And in some ways, just using lower rank rituals makes them easier to get through, because having seen people who have been using rituals a lot in certain games, when it's at the max rank, it's always tense. Even down one rank significantly ratchets off the tension, and going down 2 ranks, and it's just like, oh yeah, unless something really weird happens to us, we're gonna be okay.
Yeah, because I feel like making failure a -2 instead of a -4, like, would probably be fine.
I mean, you could do that, especially since critical failure is a degree of success down, which, like, it could easily happen to you if you roll a natural 1.
Yeah. Or, like, maybe you do something where, like, it is a scaling penalty for the number of people who fail, where it's like, oh, if you have 2 secondary or however many secondary casters, the penalty's based on how many of them fail to a maximum of -4 or something like that.
You could definitely come up with different ways to do it if you wanted to make it more complicated. In fact, I proposed something similar to that for rituals, but it was, like, very nitty-gritty, and you had to remember exactly how many people fell.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But the question was, like, is it a good idea to get into homebrewing this? So I figured we might as well talk about some of the ways that you might do that.
So when you're looking at how much...
Hold on, there was just a funny comment.
A ritual with attack trait, and you cast 3 of them back to back to get multiple attack penalty. Okay. No, but I think we have to stop here. We have to stop here until we determine what's going to happen with that penalty. What's that? Did you say it's going to be really high? Okay. So when it comes to the gold piece cost of your ritual, you can compare it to existing rituals. So rituals that create a permanent creature generally have about the same cost as each other. And if your ritual creates a permanent creature, you can use that cost too. Otherwise, you can look at some of the other benefits, which are usually lower than creating a permanent creature. Because, like, I mean, you're playing God, creating a permanent creature. Like, that's a pretty expensive thing to do. And so look at some of the other rituals. You should be able to generally see what's going on there. In general, rituals do cost a decent...
to be a math-making ritual.
Yes, it does. It has to be one. I mean, we already did that ritual in Jewel of the Indigo Isles. That was in the plot. We lost her. We need a map-making ritual to find her again.
What was that about money? We were talking about cost.
Yes, so we were talking about... yeah, I'm halfway off camera. Because Linda's just pushing me aside. She's, like, leaning into me. Okay, so... We're very professional.
Yes, much professional. Wow.
So, yeah, I was talking about costs and how you can compare them to existing rituals. You can also use that when you determine the amount of time it takes. But if it's a plot-relevant ritual, you can also use the speed of plot to determine how long it takes in the ritual. You might even decide that the ritual has, like, increasing effects as stages of the rituals happens, just to make an interesting plot line where it's like, in each of the 7 days of this sin ritual, a new thing happens and one new sin occurs and it has an effect. And then on the 7th day, because these sins were bad, but they were a price that was paid, and then the caster gets their benefit or something like that.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about is sort of the idea of rituals as ways to access the kinds of things that regular spells could do, but sooner than you would normally be able to access them, because the higher cost is like, okay, yeah, I'm thinking of teleportation. It's like, normally you couldn't teleport into higher levels, but here's like a ritual that would let you do things with like a lot of time and effort and cost.
And did you show up in the correct place.
And did you show up in the correct place, or did you show up somewhere like even more off?
That could be an appropriate time to bring back the older D&D edition thing where you teleport into a wall and die.
Yes. As a note, not going to comment I see in chat. So someone suggests somewhere an alternative version of rituals using a victory point subsystem.
You could. In fact, there have been adventures before that use victory point subsystems towards doing genericized rituals.
Absolutely. Well, that was something that was directly done a fair bit in Pathfinder Society, actually, because when something was like a ritual adjacent thing but didn't take the full day necessary for a ritual, then we might sometimes change. Occasionally we use the word ritual just because like it really fits, but sometimes we change the word and then switch it to
a
like
ritualistic casting.
Yes, and then switch it to a victory point system because it's like, well, we don't necessarily want to do the rituals because, like, you know, we were talking about here with the 4 degrees of success and like make sure everything leads to an interesting outcome. That can be hard when you're dealing with like a short pre-published adventure. So instead, using the victory point type thing where it's like, you know, the results are more based on how many victory points you get, and the very likely result is success, more so than you would expect for a traditional ritual.
Yes, so this would have never flown in the official ritual system, but it is similar to kind of what I would do if I could just make it as complicated as possible for the secondary casters, which is basically the primary casters doing their own thing, but the secondary casters do a victory point scale. So that way, once one person fails it, I don't really like that it becomes true that at that point everyone else might as well fail unless someone's going to critically succeed because it doesn't matter. So you can have the secondary casters be moving you up or down on a scale, and then you read where you are on that scale, and it tells you what happens to the primary caster.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, oh, did all 4 of the secondary caster critically succeed? Maybe you get something that's better than anything that it says right now because there's no assumption that 4 people could critically succeed. Right now, the best thing you get is just for critical success, and then it doesn't matter if the others succeed or critically succeed. Meanwhile, did everybody critically fail? Maybe it's worse than a 1 degree of success down in that point. So you can have like a spectrum of results, and then you read off of that spectrum what you got. It's like, oh, we got 2. What is 2? Well, that was from 3 successes and 1 critical failure, and this is what it does.
And Rico's talking about adapting a more high-style system with lots of different planning steps and whatnot. Absolutely. And if you were doing a more high-style thing, you could also have, you know, more obstacles and challenges that come up based on how you're, like, you know, instead of having, like, an awareness point type thing.
The
where, like,
awareness of the outer gods.
The outer gods or whatever, but it's sort of like a, you know...
The abyss stared back.
Yes, exactly. But something is going on, and it's messy, and it's like complications are arising, and now you have to do like you have to overcome
your preparation points are from gathering those eldritch ingredients and artifacts that could help you out, and be like, yeah, okay, we messed up with the survival. We'll use this compass, and that's like how a heist currently works in Infiltration in Pathfinder 2.
Oh, Nimba was asking if we think rituals will
Rico
become part
says, link to old arcade episode about subsystems.
Become a part of Starfighter 2. I mean,
well, I think they are by default because it's you know, it's compatible with Pathfinder 2. So you can use them whether or not they appear in the Starfighter core rulebook. You can use them anyway.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of compatibility.
Oh.
So, yeah, I think that definitely doing a more complex subsystem for a ritual, especially if it's like your entire storyline, can work very well. You can also have rituals that are like happening on a faster time scale. Maybe it's because the end of the ritual, so that it can happen during an encounter, where it's like on round X, the ritual progresses to do this, and then on round Y, it does this, and on round Z, it does this.
Sort of the stereotypical, like, you know, the ritual's been going on for a week, and you get there just in the nick of time to stop it.
Just near the end, and certain things are happening during those final phases of the ritual. Hopefully you make it there when they're actually doing the most important part of the ritual, and rather than when they added redundant chanting to the end of the ritual.
Like a certain final boss of the first campaign I played.
Yes, well, he knew that you guys would figure out how long his ritual was, so he added redundant chanting to the end in case you wanted to, like, grind for extra money. You could have totally gone after him at a time when he was not done yet, but you didn't.
Yep, that's true.
And nobody tried to, like, analyze the ritual's composition to see if there was redundant chanting at the end. Oh, well.
That's alright.
Always check for redundant chanting. And if you're a villain, always add redundant chanting. So if you get it's disrupted at the last minute over your cauldron or whatever, and it's like, it's disrupted. Oh my, the redundant chanting. Oh well, it's already done.
Yep.
All right. So I think we covered just about every component. We talked about different effects. We talked about cost, timing, primary, secondary caster, story roll. Doing it in many different ways, skill checks, and rituals in a variety of tabletop RPGs. So, in that case, let's say goodbye to YouTube. Bye, YouTube!